Hello everyone, my name is Eva, and once again I would like to welcome you to our webinar in Let's Learn Together program. As some of you already know, these webinars are part of Partners in Learning program initiated by Microsoft. Teachers from different countries present their innovative projects, and today we have with us Mr. David Rogers from United Kingdom. You've seen a few interesting facts about UK, and now Mr. Rogers will present his project, Project Pirates and Social Networking, which was one of the UK representatives at this year's Microsoft Innovative Education Forum held in Berlin. But before that, Mr. Darko Jurekovic, Partners in Learning Manager for Microsoft Croatia, would also like to welcome all the participants. Darko?
Thank you, Eva. I hope you can all hear me well. It is a real pleasure to be here at another one of webinars for which we are trying to bring closer projects from European Education Forum held in Berlin in March 2010, 3 months ago, because even though 150 teachers from all around Europe together to share their best practices, we strongly believe that that best practice should be shared with the broader community of teachers and educators around Europe and around the world. And that's why we started this series of live meeting webinars through which teachers who either were or were not present in Berlin can get acquainted with the projects that we're presenting there that are worth learning about. And today we are happy to have with us colleagues from the United Kingdom who had a long tradition of carrying home awards from European Education Fora and from worldwide fora as well. So let us see what they have prepared for us today. Mr. David Rogers from the United Kingdom will present his project presented in Berlin named Pirates and Social Networkings. David, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. Please, can you start sharing with us your project?
Yeah, absolutely. I shall just bring up, there it is. Good afternoon. So I'm here to talk about Pirates and Social Networking, which I took to the UK Innovative Teacher Forum and also took to Berlin. And the most important thing to say at the start is that some of my contact details are there. So if you want to have a look at some of this information, you can follow those links, and I'll also show those at the end. I'll just be reminded to switch on my camera so you can all see me, which should be coming up any moment now. So there's a few things I'd like to talk about really, and I've thought about 3 issues, and I'll try to make it a bit more simplified to condense into a half-hour presentation. And the first of all, I want to talk about some of the context, what the UK education system, our technology context, and also our curriculum context, because I think if we leave all of those things out, the project won't make a huge amount of sense. And then I also want to talk then about the actual social media and how we used social media in the classroom. And finally, I'll talk about the wider issues, because to us it's very important that it's just not about the technology. And our aim really is for the people to leave the room thinking they've learned something about 21st century piracy, rather than they've had some fun using Twitter and so on. So I'll start off with the context, and the context really is that I myself am a head of geography, and we're within a large humanities faculty. I thought you may want to see what I looked like in Berlin, and I took this project to Berlin, but my normal job is as head of geography and a classroom teacher. So I actually teach in this classroom you can see, which is also behind me. It's always this messy. I wish I could pretend it wasn't. And you know, I've got everything else to do that a normal teacher and a normal head of department would do. So for me, the main point from that is that whatever innovation I use, it needs to be very simple, but very, very effective. And this is the project that I am showing to you. And when we think about the school, we are a large inner city comprehensive school, and we start off at 11 years old all the way through to 16 years old. We've got 1,250 pupils, which for the UK is quite large, and we're in a very small site. A lot of our pupils have a very closed view of the world, and they only think about Portsmouth. So again, this project aims to widen those horizons. And also in the school, we're not technology rich compared to the UK schools. We're not technology rich, and the department itself isn't full of technology. And we also have staff who need a lot of support in just maybe using PowerPoint and email. So again, you know, it was important that the learning took priority rather than the technology. But I will talk about the technology. As I say, this is my classroom. We have 14 networked machines, and all of those are able to communicate with the internet. But as I'll speak about later, we have a lot of issues about what we can access through our network. So for example, we can't actually access either Twitter or Facebook through our networks, so we have to find a different way of doing that. However, for this project, you only need one machine that's capable of getting onto Twitter or to Facebook, and it's good to have a projector because then everybody can get involved. But it isn't really necessary to have a whole room full of computers, and that's important for us because we've got 14 computers, but we teach 1,250 students. And the curriculum is very, very important. Everything has to be curriculum first. And so, although this is pirates, it's actually about 21st century piracy in Somalia. And the reason why you'll see the little Lego man, I'll explain in a little while longer. But it's all about the human and physical environment and the interactions between the pupils and how their stuff, for example, mobile phones, computers, probably all come on container ships through the Gulf of Aden and pass through Somalia. And behind, you can actually see there is the way we're set up with the curriculum and with the technology working together. One data projector showing the whole class and my laptop working. But what was really important with all my staff is that the key question before this project was how will it improve learning, and that was the most important aspect. So hopefully now you've understand a little bit of the background of the school, and I especially want to emphasise, as I did in Berlin, that I don't think it's really important to have lots and lots of technology, but it's what you do with it that's really important. So I'll just talk about what we actually did. And here you can see the sequence, and I'll talk a little bit about each stage, and then go into some of the detail that's concerning the actual Twitter and Facebook bits, and also a little bit of the pupil interaction and the pupil work. The first thing to note is that although they're down there as lessons, which for us are an hour and 15 minutes long, they could easily just be key questions or key stages. There's no reason why each lesson could actually take a week each or 2 weeks each. It all depends really on the group of learners that you have. What is important though is to research the issue before the live interaction, really, and that's if you want to get the most out of actually the Twitter, Facebook interaction. And so the students spent a lesson looking into 21st century piracy, used Bing mainly in the web and the maps, and they noticed how the Gulf of Aden is very narrow, and also using images and seeing the contrast between the Johnny Depp image, which a lot of our girls especially had in mind, and the 21st century quite organised, highly armed pirates. And so they formed their own knowledge of what piracy was today and how they were impacted by piracy. So once you've got that background information, you can then go on to the lesson 2, and that is all about getting some real data. And the important thing here is that it is about gathering data, really, and by data I mean people's points of view, and I'll show you in a little while what we actually asked. But the important thing is to actually get the students to engage with that data, and I'll explain a bit about that in a moment. And then the third lesson, we actually did a little bit of live interaction with some people through Twitter, where the pupils got some hands-on experience in talking to other educators and other people from around the world. And with all this, I'd like to sort of emphasize again that really you only need a few people to take part to start with. And in my case, when we first did a project like this to do something else, it was a colleague next door who was on Twitter doing the interaction. So it doesn't necessarily have to be huge groups of people. But what you can see here is 2 extracts. The top one is from Twitter, and you can see a tweet, if you don't know about it, is 140 character little response that you can send out onto the internet. And the one at the bottom was on my Facebook status, and as you can see, we actually had Teachers TV in to film a year 8 group, which for us are 12 years to 13 years. And what I did about 2 or 3 days before the second lesson, I put these out and started to gather responses. And the question that I asked was, I wanted 5 words that you associated with pirates. And if you think maybe quickly yourselves of those 5 words, what might they be? The school's having some bandwidth issues at the moment, which is why my videos come in and out. But if you just think, 5 words and pirates, what would they be? And I'll show you what we found out. But from here, it's really important. This stage took place 2 or 3 days before the lesson. And really, again, it doesn't matter even if there's only 5 or 10 responses, because it's what then you do with that data. And what I did was I used a nice free tool called Wordle.net to get all of those words, and I put them into Wordle. And what Wordle does is that it increases the size of the word the more often it occurs. So for example, in here we can see that rum, treasure, sea, ship, parrot were among the most popular words. And in this case, because I asked Facebook friends, because they're my social friends, so they brought in a slightly different point of view, and I asked my Twitter friends, I got about 40 or 50 responses over the 2 or 3 days. And so I literally copy and pasted those across into Wordle. And if you haven't used Wordle before, I strongly recommend it. But you can see there is Somalia in there, but the majority of the stereotype is that it's all about the Johnny Depp and the old style of piracy that we see through video. And I use this Wordle with the students to explore the issue, basically. And it's a very powerful way of visualizing a lot of written data in particular. But we've got to do something with the data, and this is where now the social networking is starting to be interacted with the pupils. And here is a little blog post that the pupils have access to. And as you can see, I've asked them 3 questions. And you've got to remember that they've already explored piracy, so they know that piracy today is very, very different from the stereotyped view that's come through, and they also know how we are personally connected in a geographical way to piracy, which is really important. But I wanted them, instead of saying, right, what should we do about this, I wanted them to actually collaborate, work together to come up with what they should do. So I asked these 3 questions, and I got them to work in pairs, and as you can see, here are some responses, which I won't read through, but I'll let you have a little look. And here we explored a lot of issues, like, did they actually wanted them to know what the pirates were like today? And most importantly, I asked them how would they like to present this information. And this is really important, I think, in developing a literacy for 21st century learning, and indeed 21st century working. I think now we're on live on through the internet on live meeting. Our young people could be interacting in this way with people from across the world. So with that, they have to think about issues like how they were going to get this information to people. So there you can see, we spent a good sort of 10-15 minutes of the lesson thinking about what we should do. And you can notice at the bottom, they started to think about legal and copyright issues and, internet safety issues. So that's the first kind of interaction, really, if you like. And I'll just go back a slide, actually. From this, the pupils then they decided, right, this is what we want to tell these people, these real people from across the world, about piracy. These are the issues that we need to deal with, and this is how we're going to present it. And I had 14 pairs of students working together, and I think I had 14 all slightly different kind of responses and ideas, which is great, because I don't think we should be encouraging pupils to all do the same thing, to almost be on like a conveyor belt, really. And this is really what a live feed looks like. And this is then now, so we've had the lesson where we're looking at the backgrounds, we've had the lesson that is looking at the issue and the stereotyped issue, and now we've got this lesson that I thought, well, what if we could have some responses from real people, real time. So here you can see there was at least five people that I know got in touch, and really that's all you need to have. You don't need to worry about having lots of people getting involved here. And as you can see, what I asked them was to throw in some extra information. So my friend at the bottom there, who I've known for many years, thought he'll throw in, do modern pirates say "yah"? And initially that seems like a silly, frivolous, simple question. But however, when the pupils start to think about it, they start to think about, well, actually these pirates are in Somalia, so no, they probably don't say that. And they could explain to this person that, no, they don't say "yah" because they speak, they don't speak English to start with. You can see the person second from bottom who wanted something visual. And wanted something that was presented visually, and there's annotated map. But the idea of this is that the pupils have to react to a real stream coming in. And as I'll probably mention again in a moment, they love this because, in their words, it's talking to real people, not like Mr. Rogers. So they kind of see these as real people and maybe teachers not as real people, which may be a bit concerning, but they really like this kind of format. So trying to sort of sum up those two issues, really, those two methods. The first is the providing data, and I think this can be used in any subject whatsoever. And in fact, we've gone on to talk about the Haitian earthquake, the current crisis in the Gulf of Mexico. We used it to look through, our recent general election in the UK. So you can really use this in any setting at all. I've also seen colleagues using this in other subjects in primary to ask, you know, what are the 5 words you think about when you hear Croatia or Russia or Australia, and also to gather some mathematical data, so maybe weather data, or maybe kind of heights, or and so on. And it's just the way, all it is data that you could easily make up or get yourself, but the fact that it's gathered through social networking somehow makes people engage a lot more, and as I say, they think of it as real people. So a simple flowchart, really, I would say, is, you know, gather that data before the lesson, and you've thought carefully about your question. And to be honest, the more controversial an issue, the better it seems to work. And then present that information and explore it with the pupils, whether that be through Wordle, or you could give them just the raw data, the raw stream of data. Then link that data to the topic being studied, and that's a really vital point, because if we don't, then really all we're doing is playing around with Twitter and Facebook rather than actually advancing learning. And then finally, you know, it's getting those pupils to engage and interact with the information. And in the past, you know, we've done songs, poems, presentations, news reports. And the great thing about this technique is that if you've done the groundwork 2 or 3 days before, you're actually able to do very little planning for that lesson, because the pupils really engage with the information and really you know, do a lot of the hard work themselves, which is always good for hard-working busy classroom teachers who have got many other classes. Using the social networking in real time, and I'll talk about the wider issues in a moment, but really we use a teacher account that's visible to the class, if you remember that image at the start, via a data projector. And I do that for 2 reasons. One is internet safety, which I'll talk about in a little while, but also the whole class is involved and they can see. And then I get the class to interact with those people by putting questions and responding to questions using my account or my staff's accounts. We're not using their personal accounts, and for us in the UK that's really important. And also the pupils are working collaboratively to react to the questions. I've tried this where it's not paired and it's not in groups and the pupils work individually, and it's not as effective. So I fully recommend, you know, if you are going to use Twitter or Facebook for this, then you know you can do it that way. But most importantly, really, the last thing to say is that if you've got no technology at all in the classroom, but you do at home, you can gather all the data at home and you can bring that in and just tell the story to the pupils of how you gathered that data. And the final very short bit really are the other issues, because of course the curriculum is very important, but here in the UK, and I think as educators and as learners ourselves, we have a responsibility to not only teach content but also to explore the wider issues of actually, you know, skills for life, as we call it here. And I think there's 5 of those, and that's my little boy there, busy tapping away on my netbook. And the first thing really is it's all about internet safety. Now in the UK it's very much about blocking internet sites like Twitter. However, I think that's not really helping young people to be safe online. So we talk about those issues as we're doing the project. You know, what do you need to think about? So not using my full name, not mentioning which school we're actually in, not giving personal details. So it's a very powerful tool to get that across and to be embedded in the curriculum. So it's not just tackled by information technology lessons, as we call them here. The second point is that it's sometimes, I think, Facebook and Twitter to our pupils can be quite feral. There can be a lot of bullying there, and this is showing them how you can use that social media to learn. I started using Twitter to talk to other teachers and to learn about you know, different lessons and how people were doing, and this came because of that. So it's sharing with our pupils. We're learning too, and you know, they are sometimes the experts in social media, but they don't really know how to use it to learn. They may need, know how to use it to communicate, but I think not to learn. The third point is copyright and referencing, and I think that's very important, so not using images that aren't our own, or if we do, to acknowledge them. If we're using music, to make sure we've tried to seek permission. The fourth point is real-time deadlines, and when you've got a live Twitter feed, even if it's just one person and that person's the teacher next door or your friends who you've tipped off, they can say, I want this by the end of the lesson. And I think that's a real way in which to get pupils to really respond to deadlines, and also they get real feedback from their work in real time. And finally, as one of my young people said to me, they really value interacting with real people. So not teachers, and it opens their minds a little bit to the fact that this could be somebody sat in Croatia or in the USA who is actually reading their stuff and who's going to respond to it. And if you close the loop in that way, that's really, really powerful in terms of learning. And also it means that pupils have left the room going, we learned about how we are connected to piracy in Somalia today, rather than we learnt how to use Twitter today. Just a final couple of slides, really, that if you do this sort of thing, all of a sudden your school ends up in the paper, which for us, when the department's in the paper, the head likes that, and he's more willing to give us more help and more support. And finally, I'll just put up again there, I know this has been recorded as well, but there's how to contact me through Twitter, how to email me, and also a lot of what I've talked about, especially if you want to know detail, is all on my blog. And if you search on the blog looking for Twitter, you'll get a lot of the ideas there, and also the problems that I encountered. But please do feel free if you have any questions after today.
Well, this was impressive indeed. David, can you hear us? It seems that David had lost the audio connection. In the meantime, Eva, can we jump in with further materials that we use to enter into this Q&A session of ours?
Yes, Darko, I guess David is having problems. We're going to wait for him to come back. In the meanwhile, I would like to ask you if you have any questions. You can ask questions orally by turning on your microphone, or by using the questions and answers tool from the menu in the bottom left corner. If you ask questions that way, I will read them out loud and David will answer them. Well, since David is not here right now, or he is but he can't hear us, I'm not sure. Marco, I would ask you to check if David is here and if he can hear us, please. Okay, so Marco says he's dealing with that. We're going to wait for David. In the meanwhile, again, I'm going to remind you of David's blog. It's davidrogers.blogspot.com. If you would like to follow David's work, I would suggest you visit his blog. I'm sure you would all agree this was a very interesting presentation. I'm going to thank David later once he gets back. I hope...
I'm back now, so...
Oh, hi, David. So, okay, so do you want to finish?
Where did you lose me from?
Not sure. I think it was the last slide. You were talking about newspapers following your work.
Okay, yeah, I just said that, you know, sometimes if you do projects like this, it's always worth getting in touch with some of your local media, because then head teachers especially, you know, like to support such initiatives. And the final slide, I basically just said that there's different ways to get in touch with me, and I'm more than happy for emails or people to contact me through Twitter if they want to know more about the project.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. This is a great presentation. Thank you for sharing your valuable project. Seeing your work is definitely very motivating. I hope this will push the other teachers to do something similar in their classrooms. Well, I would also like to apologize for a little mistake that we had at the beginning when we announced Armenia, which was in fact our last webinar. So, David,
Okay.
I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay, so we do have a few questions. Lydia is asking, do children use their own accounts on Facebook or Twitter? Oops, I lost the question. Okay, but I remember she also asked if there are plans for other projects like this to continue.
Yes, there are more projects like this going on, and we don't do it all the time because I think it wouldn't be as effective. But no, we don't use people's own accounts, and that's because of UK regulations really governing internet safety. We're not allowed to interact with them that way.
Okay, thank you. Well, you did mention that they actually do not use their own accounts, that you use your account, right? Facebook and Twitter accounts.
Yes, they use.
Reasons.
Yeah, they use my accounts for safety reasons, but the hope is that then they go on to use their own accounts to kind of talk about this sort of thing as well, or other issues.
Okay, thank you. Darko has a question. Did children change their behavior on social networks and came back with ideas for further learning projects in and out of classroom using social networking?
Yes, we asked some questionnaires after this initial project, and it seemed that you know, they could use social networking actually to start to support their schoolwork, and they never really thought about using Facebook in particular, and they started to set up little groups like, you know, exam geography, exam maths and things. So yeah, it did change. And what was the second part of the question?
Did they come back with ideas for further learning projects in and out of the classroom using social networking?
There's been two ideas. One is that social networking could be used to keep parents involved with field trips when we go away in geography, and school trips in general. And another one that came from pupils, when the Iceland volcano erupted and the aircraft were grounded, the pupils actually suggested, why don't you ask your Twitter people about how it's affected them? And I did that live in the lesson with no planning, and we did get some response back, which was excellent.
Okay, great. That sounds great. Dragana has a question, but actually, Dragana, if you could just write it down, because there's nothing in the Q&A tool. Also, if anyone wants to speak up, you can do that by turning on your microphone. And in the meanwhile, I would like to ask you, how did your school react to this project and introducing it into the classroom? Did they back you up?
Yes, eventually they did. I call it something called similar to guerrilla warfare, sort of as in guerrilla innovation, in that we did it, and I could do that as a head of department, and then I showed the success. But I did have long conversations with our heads about the safety aspects in particular, and that's what concerned the head. But now, full support, yes. And part of that is, you know, Microsoft Partners in Learning picking up the project as a good practice, and also the media giving it a positive spin, and ultimately the pupils showing better learning, and that's the argument that really swung it for our head teacher.
Mm-hmm. And what about the other teachers? After seeing your successful project, did they also start doing something similar in their classes?
Yes, some of them have. Not everyone. We're about 70 teachers in this school, and the secret is, I think, is that if everybody started using it, I think some of the impact would be lost. But some of the more surprising teachers, so those who aren't really very literate with technology, have seen the potential in this and started to explore using this. And once you show how simple it is, that's the most important thing, I think. And actually, what I've found is that Twitter is easier to use than email, for example. So, you know, some of the staff, I've got a member of staff who's been teaching for almost 40 years and is not very confident with computers, and she loves this because it's very, very easy. You know, a quick question a couple of days before a lesson. And also, you know, we're using this in more than one class, so we each have about 5 year 8 classes. So, you know, you're putting that work in and you can use it with 8 different groups of people and come out with 8 different, five different groups of people and 5 different outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you have used technology in the sense of Facebook and Twitter in this case, but I assume that you use technology in teaching other lessons too, other kinds of technology, let's say so.
Yes, we're starting to use you know, a much wider range of technology. Here in the UK, there's a big push for 21st century learning. Our biggest issue, to be honest, is access to technology. You know, a lot of our students, about 96% of our students, will have access to internet and so on at home. But I think what's underused is the handheld device, and so a lot of my effort this year has been how to use phones in learning across different subjects.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you mentioned your learning network, which you used for this project. Can you explain a bit more about that? What kind of a learning network is it? Where do you find your colleagues in it? How do you connect with them?
Yeah, the way I did it was I listened to a similar presentation to this one, and I found that person on Twitter, and I looked at who they were following, because you can see who they're connected to, and I just made friends with all of them, and then I started to interact, so actually answering their questions and answering other people's questions, and then gradually over about you know, 6 to 12 months, I got to a place where I can be relatively certain that I would get responses back. However, you know, that's why I also use Facebook, because although they're my personal friends, I know they'll respond to me. Mm-hmm. So, but I fully recommend, you know, Twitter. Really, it's what you make it, and you know, I use it quite a bit, some would say, but it's very good for connecting people.
And what about the children, the pupils? In this case, you used your account, but are you connected with them on Facebook, on Twitter?
No, because our regulations don't allow us to. We're very tightly controlled in the UK in that teachers can't really use third-party software, but we do have virtual learning environments. But what I tend to do is use something like our virtual learning environment and forums that are very tightly controlled, really, and moderated. But no, the live interaction can't be done here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Okay, so Dina said that it's a great project, just a bit hard to organize without internet access and technology in classrooms. Yeah, well, that's true. Let's hope that will change soon. I'm not sure where Dina is from.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I think what I would say with that is, you know, some of our staff and other staff I've worked with in other schools in the same position have just used their internet at home to collect the data and taken it in as on bits of cards or as a poster, and then just explain to the pupils, this is where I got it from, and these are my friends, and I think they need some help understanding this. But I agree, it is much better if you can use it actually in the physical classroom, but I think you can still use this as a data gathering tool. A good example, we had a big storm in about February this year, and I asked at home for stories about that. So various people sent me their stories, and I took those in with me. I didn't actually show those through the screen or Twitter. I just said, look, here are some stories, and I cut them out, and I stuck them on bits of card, and I said, can you investigate where these people are, and that sort of thing. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, Dina says that she's she works in a special school in Rijeka, that's in Croatia. So, well, that kind of explains her comment about not having technology in classrooms, unfortunately. Okay, thank you very much for the answers and the whole webinar. I think we don't have any questions left. So I also think we have come to an end of another successful webinar. I would like to thank everyone for participating. This is our last webinar before summer vacation. We will continue with presenting projects after summer, when we'll have a chance to hear webinars from Austria, Germany, Switzerland, and many more. So watch out for our next webinar. You will receive an email invitation, and I hope you'll join us again. David, thank you very much. This was very interesting, very motivating, and I'm sure everyone will agree. Thanks to all the participants. I don't know if Darko wants to say a few words for the end.
Thank you, Eva. Just wish everyone a sunny and warm summer, which we all deserve. Everyone.
Thank you, Darko. All right, so thanks, everyone. Thank you very much, David. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and I hope to see you again online very soon. Bye from Croatia.
Bye-bye.
This was great. Bye.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.